I remember from the story. So
No, no,
yeah.
no. I was talking about, or is this recording? Is this
Oh yeah,
doing
yeah,
its
yeah,
job?
yeah, yeah, yeah. We're good.
Okay. Yeah, 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 cool. Yeah, man. So whenever I say societalist, so and I only use the term Christian societalist because as how Christian nationalism and that term is received on a political and I think on a social scale right now, it kind of has like a bad like nuance to it. And so kind of or not nuance, but like a feel. And so kind of what I'm seeing with a lot of Christian nationalists is they kind of want to go through a top-down structure where they legislate morality through the federal government and basically make it an issue of cool, we're just going to go ahead and enforce this and make this happen in such a fashion that I think will create more problems than it will solve problems. Now, allow me to be clear. I believe that the overturning of abortion I believe that the removal of gay marriage being recognized as a form of marriage and it being recognized as anything sacred whatsoever. I believe that I believe like death penalty for like people who are sex trafficking children, especially. I think all of those things are okay. But the mechanism at which we go through it is really really important. Because what I refuse to believe in and what I refuse to hold to is Christian tyranny or even at a level a Christian authoritarianism, because I think that's going to create more problems than it will solve problems. And so what I infer about being a Christian societalist is this is that you do not create national law from the federal level, but you create national law from the societal level. You create it from the state level, because the state is ultimately made up of people and I think that if you really you're just working too fast and you work from the top down, then you're not recognizing the individuals that make up that nation. Because again, we live in a society that is a democratic republic, and so if we're going to do this thing, we need to go through the right processes.
Hmm.
And if we're not going through the right processes, then I think that's tyrannical and that's unfair. And again, I think that the Supreme Court and I think that secularism as a religion has been at fault for many decades now for doing things the unfair way. But as Christians, we don't want to adhere to how the world does things and how the world conducts itself in its character. If we're going to live in this nation, and we're going to be members of this nation, then there's a certain conduct and a certain morale that we should carry in how we conduct ourselves, especially in relationship to voting and policy. And so I think going through what I call the bottom up method versus the top down method is more effective. To kind of give a closure on people who are viewing, they're like, what do you mean by bottom up? This is what I mean is that I think that before we try to change our nation, we should try to change our states. Because what's the point of changing a nation if you're not changing your state? And to kind of give like the 10,000 foot view of the A to Z, this is not A to B as if our B is our end goal. There's a Z, but I think and practically speaking, it starts with effective evangelism and discipleship as a primary as a Christian. Okay, I'm a Christian first. My Christian identity is my only identity and then as a secondary to that, something that comes immediately underneath it, at a 10,000 foot level is my status as being an American. And I love being an American. I'm grateful that we live in the nation that we do. And I still believe that it is the greatest nation on the earth. But I believe that it is a nation that is in a state of decay, especially in regards to its morality. And that's a major concern for me, especially with how prominent blasphemy is in regards to Christ because I think that a culture's ability to blaspheme its own God is probably one of the strongest points that you can look at to say whether or not they're in a state of cultural decay or not. And I think, given the issue with the Olympics recently, I think it gives a clear example, generally speaking, of where the West is at in its decline, so to speak. But anyways, I think that what we do is we advocate and are active towards Christian policies being put into place at a state level, in a fashion that clearly represents the culture of the state, right? And so one of the reasons I believe that we've seen so much moral decline is because the people who promote moral decline are actually active towards it. If we're being honest, we really don't see a lot of Christian activism. In the United States in general, I don't think that's very common. And even if it is, in the primary, the only thing that we really have is pro-life or anti-abortion rallies. And don't get me wrong, like I'm for those, but they're genuinely not as common. And I think it's because we have decided and we've grown comfortable with passivity, which I think comes as a byproduct of a culture of escapism that is developed within Christianity in the West, which primarily comes from kind of this idea, which is a whole other slew of issues. But like rapture theology and so on and so forth, and an imminent return of Christ has kind of put us in a position where we've become passive, and where we've leaned into that thought so much that we're like, oh, well, Christ is coming back anyways, so the world can go to hell. And it's like, no, like that's not the way that we want to live, because that has absolutely zero compassion for the society that we live in. And it has no love for it. So I hope that kind of answers the question that we work from the states, and we work from a state level campaign in our state.
Yep.
And then from campaigning in our state, and getting all the states on the same page, or at least a majority of the states on the same page, then we can actually see amendments be brought through on the Supreme Court level. But that's only through doing things the right way and not trying to
Mhm.
top down morality or try to top down immorality.
Yeah, and I think that's important to know. We've had a small discussion for the last couple days through kind of Instagram. Only you can
Right.
only do 1 minute clips, so a lot of us are like spamming. We've been like
Yes, and
spamming
we're just sending, like,
responses.
10 minutes worth of audio messages, and I'm like, "We just need to call,
Oh,
because
dude,
this
yeah,
is
like
getting a
let's just start the
name."
conversation.
I'm getting
But
tired of hearing my own voice is what's happening.
so I think you have marked it as a different approach than your traditional what people would classify as Christian nationalism, whether that be
Right,
Charlie Kirk or these really strong conservative pastors. You know, you're in Mississippi, I'm in
right.
Arizona. There's plenty of them around our churches speaking out and doing those things. A lot of their opposition would say that they're Christian nationalists, and I know some people are like, well, that's not a correct term, and that's not this, and all of that stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Regardless of the terminology, which can be its own discussion at some point, you're
Yeah.
saying that what you're believing is for a different approach, but
Mm.
ultimately kind of the same society at
Goal.
that end game, correct?
Yes, exactly, and I think that
Yeah.
it's gonna I think that it prevents